everybody. Welcome to Let's Fix Live, the weekly show where it just kind of happens when I feel like it because that's how I do things. Because we want to have the best people on. This week we have Jordan Tannenbaum, um, content creator, like worked with multiple corporate companies, really moved from the SDR role into the content creation role and did a pretty good job of it. Don't want to say the company because there's an announcement pending very soon. But yeah, super excited to have you on, man.
I'm so stoked to be here. Thank you for having me. Love the intro music and yeah, excited to fix content, hopefully. Maybe not forever,
It's
but
always fun watching people because with StreamYard, like I have the little video and seeing people kind of dance around a little bit sometimes. You didn't go too far. No, you
no,
don't want to do that. That
no,
no.
no TikTok dances for me. But
No, I dance like an 8-year-old with a sparkler, so it's not the best look for me.
I just refuse because I don't want to be ridiculed. But no, man, I'm really excited to be here, and I've been following you and watching your content grow for a while, watching your followers grow, and just happy to be here, especially coming from like a, a past sales role and transitioning into content creation and social media management. It's been a good journey, and it felt like it was a great fit. So yeah, just stoked to be here, man.
So let's kind of start with that transition because you started in the SDR, like in the phone mines, so to speak.
Yeah,
What made you make the jump? Where's the overlap? Like, kind of walk me through that transition.
sure. So I was a social media manager, or excuse me, sorry, SDR and I was an account executive for a little while. Kind of went back and forth, just depending on the size of the company. But for like 7 to 8 years, it was really my first job out of college, cold calling restaurants and getting screamed at because it's a pizza place on a Friday night. And don't you know it's a pizza place on Friday night? Because I was in California calling New York, and
Yep.
God, we had some very funny phone calls. But I did that for a long time and I really hated it. I'll be completely honest.
Yeah.
Being an SDR is probably it's like the if you made a graph, it's like the or Venn diagram. It's like the least fun and the least appreciated, and then like a triple Venn diagram, like the least paid.
Ye-
And even though companies always say like, "Oh, like SDRs are the most valuable. We love our SDRs." The fact is, the amount of times I was told I'd be promoted within 12 months, and then like some old guy who had been working for in sales as an account executive for 30 years was like hired into my place, and I just like was like I thought I thought we had an agreement. That
Yeah.
just happened like over and over. I mean, I was hired and the company didn't have like a commission plan in place. I was hired and my account executive wouldn't click the check mark in Salesforce, and I was out like 15 grand in commission. And so after a while, I was just like, God, this is really rough. And I reached out to a
Yeah.
buddy who I had seen working at a company. We had worked together previously at a company called Cloudless, which was awesome. That was like one of the better
Yeah.
SDR experiences I ever had. They were bought by Netscope, I believe. But
Yeah.
so no, nothing negative to about anyone there. That was a really awesome company. Um, and we became friends there. I was let go because they ran out of money. I was being an SDR, and he was looking for. So his company got a whole bunch of funding, and I reached out just to say like, "Congrats, man! Like, excited that you guys, got this huge funding." And he was like, "Hey, I'm actually looking for a content manager." And it was a really technical Kubernetes company, and I didn't know anything about Kubernetes, but I loved writing. He saw, my emails as an SDR, my posts on LinkedIn, things like that. And he knew I was a good writer. And I went to USC to study writing. I wanted to be a food and travel writer, but I ended up getting like some stomach issues, which is
Oh,
kind of ironic, wanting to be a food and travel writer. So
yeah.
that didn't happen, but I still was, I helped a lot of people write their essays in college and edit them, and
Mm.
they would tip me, if you will, for
Yes.
helping them.
I'm familiar with such a service-based economy. Yes.
Yes, it was a service, and so yeah, I was really good at writing, and he recognized that and thought that I'd be a great content manager. So I got hired as a content manager, and it was kind of strange. There wasn't a ton of content to be created, and so he was like, "Hey, like, do you want to run social media?" And I was like, "Hell yeah! Like, I love social media, and I don't
Yeah.
really like it. I don't post about myself a ton, but I love posting in general, and trying to like go viral." I'm sorry, I'm doing a lot of air quotes today, but Um, and yeah, I just fell in love with it. And that company was also fantastic, a really great culture where, just folks were sharing about what they did. And there was, channels in Slack for knitting or plants or cars or
Hmm.
whatever people were interested in. And it was a great company. It was a great experience. Unfortunately, they had to lay off about like 40% of their staff. And which just kind of,
And you were on the chopping block.
yeah, no, I got chopped hard.
Yeah.
And I kind of stuck with it, and I worked at a small startup. Like you said, I'm got a big announcement coming soon about kind of a much more corporate social media role, which I'm really excited because, um, yeah, the bigger you can go with social media in terms of company, the better. Um, and yeah, I'm so thankful for my sales experience because it taught me how to interact with people, how to talk to people, how to be persuasive, how to. I mean, especially in like emails, like you got to do like 125 words, which is essentially a tweet or a post on social media.
Yeah.
Uh, and yeah, I couldn't be more happy switching to social media. It's less stress. Maybe make slightly less money depending on if the guy clicks the Salesforce check mark and I get my commission. But it's just less stress. It's more fun. It's more creative. It is marketing, but it's fun marketing.
Yes.
You're not sending out email blasts, and I don't have to deal with HubSpot or Salesforce. Like I don't even need access to
Because
any.
aren't those places such fun, like environments to live in?
It's a necessary evil. I think that I've always said that to my
Mm,
parents. It
yeah.
it's it can be very helpful, like keeping track and remembering who you called and when you called them and what you talked
Yeah.
about, and but yeah, it's a pain in the butt. And I'm so glad I don't need to deal with that. I deal with
No.
Twitch, I deal with YouTube, I deal with Twitter, I deal with LinkedIn, like all of these companies that have really streamlined UIs and
Yeah.
UXs, and um, yes, it's just I couldn't be happier.
Because that's something I really want to dive into. Because you're on a lot of different platforms right now when you're doing this. Like, how do you pick the right platforms as a company? Like, and when do you like kind of drop it? Like, okay, Twitter isn't my avenue. You like whatever it happens to be. When do you say I don't need to be on Parlor or Truth Social or like because no one could be on every single platform out there.
Well, you're definitely right. I think so. There's Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn,
Hmm.
Twitch, YouTube. Um, those are kind of like the standard go to, and I
Yeah.
think um, other than Facebook, I think most companies should probably Instagram too. I think most
Yeah.
companies, uh, it doesn't hurt to post on all of them, even if engagement is low, because there
Yeah.
are tools like Hootsuite and Sprout Social that it's one click and it just publishes it for you. And you don't
Hmm.
really have to, you get all your comments in one place. And, if there's no comments coming, it's not like you have to check more spaces. It's already
Yeah.
there and it's nothing. Um, but when it comes to Reddit, Quora, Stack Overflow, Hacker News, Product Hunt, like kind of these like a little more not fringe, but just a little more outside of most companies,
Hmm.
I think they should be posting on there too. And um, Reddit maybe a little bit less, and
Yeah.
in Stack Overflow and Quora, you don't need to necessarily post, but you can answer questions, which is really helpful because it continually directs traffic to your website. But my kind of
And that's
theory,
one that I haven't heard anybody mention before, and I love the idea because you're talking actively to somebody who is asking about a problem you solve in many cases.
the buddy who hired me to become a social media manager, he was a content manager at that company, Cloudless, and he was the one who taught me about doing that on Stack Overflow and Quora. And we had so much traffic, like constantly, because people would say like it was an API company. How do I connect this to this? How do I connect this to this?
Hmm.
And his answer was always at the top, and he'd mention our company, and people would click the link, and uh, it's the to answer your original question, the theory that I subscribe to, I guess, is um, meet people where they are.
Hmm.
Personally, I love LinkedIn and I love Reddit. Those are my two favorite. I don't really use Twitter. I don't really tweet
No.
personally. I definitely don't post on Facebook. I'll post on Instagram occasionally. Maybe I'll look for questions on Stack Overflow or Quora occasionally, but I'm not like not trawling through those social medias, but every single person is different. Where I know like tons of developers love Reddit, and when they're not working, it's Reddit all the time. Then there's like
Mhm.
older folks who it's like Facebook. Then there's people who are really into like education and they like LinkedIn or or Stack Overflow or Quora. And
Mhm.
every single person is going to want to, or even YouTube or Twitch. Like I love YouTube. That's kind of how I consume most of my media. So if
Mhm.
companies have YouTube videos, I definitely watch them. And of course, not everyone's like that. My wife has never watched YouTube, doesn't care about it at all. And it's just, you got to meet people where
Yeah.
they are. And so as long as you're like if there's zero interaction for 6 months, yeah, and the only place
Yeah.
I've really seen that is Facebook. You can probably avoid it, but the most important thing is meet people where they are. So I think it's important to kind of not only use all of those avenues, but also make it easier on yourself. So if you're streaming live on Twitch, excuse me, take that video, you can extract the audio, and now that's your podcast. You can cut the video into clips and use the
Mhm.
whole video as on YouTube. You can take a short clip from YouTube and post it on LinkedIn with a long written piece, or you can do the same thing on Twitter with a short written piece.
Mhm.
So it's important not only to meet people where they are, but also to be as efficient as you can with social media.
Because I like that because what I found with many companies that I do consulting with and that I've spoken to is they want to be everywhere, but they don't have an idea of where their customers are. And so they try to do everything at once. Like, I'm a big fan of literally sitting down and understanding where your ideal customers are. Like, if I like LinkedIn because that's the people I want to talk to. I don't want to talk to the Facebook people. Like YouTube has pretty much everybody and it's tougher to narrow down, but I still post in those places. Like I'm still live on Facebook and YouTube because I know eventually I may want to jump more into those and I want the backlog of content. So it
Yeah,
doesn't look like I just started yesterday.
yeah, and that's another thing is it doesn't even if the interaction is low, it doesn't really hurt. Even if you have 33
Yeah.
views on a video that's on YouTube, that's
Hmm.
something about how to use a specific aspect of your software, people will look at it
Yeah.
and it will help them, and then they won't have to bother with like putting in a ticket or anything like that. So
Hmm.
I think
And that's something that helps so much in terms of building credibility because I can talk to a customer and say, "Hey, I actually spoke about this 8 months ago," and
100.
send them to that video. Like it shows that I've been talking about the problem and been solving it for a period of time and builds that credibility from there.
And it does build credibility, and even beyond that, I think social media is not like, yeah, there are people who go viral and posts that go viral, and even that doesn't really make someone on social media.
No,
But if you are continually posting in all of these different places over time, that's how you gain a following. Even if it's
yeah,
slow, you can't look at, yeah, I have 10,000 YouTube subscribers and only 50 Facebook followers. It's no, you have 10,050 people who care about your content. And
yeah.
it's more the sum of its parts than anything individual.
So, so what I've talked to a lot of people about is finding the right tone of voice when you're creating the content and when you're writing. Like, how do you do that? How do you find the right way to speak to your customers when you're talking on these different platforms? Because I see them almost like different bars you need to be in, and I'm going to talk very differently at a dive bar than I am in a corporate mixer. And that's how the way I see Facebook and LinkedIn respectively.
It's interesting because nowadays I think that's being blended a little bit,
Hmm.
where like memes are like getting lots of likes on LinkedIn, and
I do it all the time.
exactly. And I think funny is always like maybe not the easiest, but the most acceptable. If
Hmm.
of course, you don't want to make fun of people or put anything out that's offensive, but
Yeah.
as long
Punch up, don't kick down.
yes, 100%. So I think the way to talk to people is, yeah, it has to be a little different, but I think it's more the format than the voice. I think the
Yeah.
voice should always be funny. It should always be friendly. Should always be approachable. Like you said, never like punching down, never being degrading or like you don't know this. Like, oh my god, it's not really that. Just fun, lighthearted. I mean, if you look at like the biggest companies that are doing the best on social media, like KFC is like roasting, or Wendy's is roasting people, and
Yeah.
like Simulate Chicken Nuggets just like had got 80,000 followers from posting like ridiculous memes on
Yeah.
Instagram. And so I wouldn't say there's one way to talk to people. Like I
No.
said, the format. So on LinkedIn, you can have like what 3,000 characters or words. I forget which one.
Yeah.
And it's if you want to use all of that, go ahead. Make your format longer, but your voice should be the same. It should be friendly. It should, if you're making a serious announcement, about funding, it can still be fun. Like, woohoo, we're
Hmm.
getting funded. So excited to grow the company. And as long as it's kind of, I don't know. A lot of companies just are very kind of like
Stick in the mud.
robotic. Yeah, they're robotic where it's like we are doing this and it is great, and it's like okay, you want to sound
The
people.
robot voice is a nice touch there.
Thank you, thank you. Um, you know, People want to like companies, and there's reasons that there's people that camp outside of like Foot Locker for new Jordans, or there's people who camp outside for weeks for the new Apple product. I hope people don't do that anymore, but um,
Yeah. There's going to be another one next year, and you could get it 3 days later. Like
exactly.
I
But
don't understand that.
there are people who love those companies, and like those
Mhm.
companies, their advertising is not robotic, it's fun. I mean, everyone remembers
Mhm.
like the when the iPod came out and they had like the dancing like silhouettes with different colors, and it's like that doesn't have to be like we have
Mhm.
16 gigabytes of storage and you can download in 2 seconds. It's not, no one cares about that. Like
No.
you want to be fun, you want to be lighthearted. um and just I don't know, I feel like people are always like these days, focused on some horrible tragedy or some political thing, and it's like anything you can do to kind of like pull people out of it and make them smile for a little bit is the voice that I want to use.
Because that's something that I want to talk about too, is particularly because here in the US, we're 8 days from the election. It's become very vitriolic. And the way I'm seeing the world now is everything has become politicized. When a public health crisis has become politicized, we've kind of hit that point. And before, when we were talking about like, oh well, if you don't have one person of every ethnicity in the photo, it's all of a sudden a political statement. Like, oh, you did not find a Inuit for this meeting picture.
Yeah,
That means you hate Native Americans all of a sudden. And yes, I'm all for diversity and inclusion, but there's like, where do we draw the line? How do we talk about things that have become politicized in a friendly way? How do we make it where we're that fun and friendly person when it's a very serious topic like gay rights, women's rights, something along those lines?
so I'd say my first answer is check with your boss. That
Yes.
and I say that because they're gonna have a good pulse on what's right, and they're the one who determines
Mm.
your employment
Well,
status.
well, well. They're the ones who determine. They're not always the ones who know what's right.
Yeah,
I
no, no,
will
no.
clarify. Yes,
They determine what's appropriate for the
what you're
business,
allowed to do.
and that way, if you do post anything, you can always say, "Hey, you know, that's what they told me to do,"
Yeah.
which is that's a thing in its own right. But I think it really is up to the company, and some companies will post about LGBTQ rights and say like we support that, or like Black Lives Matter, and they'll make a post during Juneteenth
Mhm.
or whatnot, and it is up to the company, right or wrong. Like as much as I'm the voice of social media and I do
Mhm.
support all of those things, I cannot just go out and like go rogue essentially and post all of these
Yeah.
things. So it is up to the company a little bit, but I also think um to post about those things, you kind of need to like gain the trust of all of your employees. And
Mhm.
like in a previous company I worked at, like we would have like there was like an LGBTQ plus group. There was an African American group. There was a um, uh, like an Asian and a Latino group, and like
Mhm.
these companies, what am I saying? These groups would meet and talk about whatever issues were on their mind, and I would show up, and anyone could, of course,
Mhm.
be there, but um, and being there for months and listening and just talking and sharing my experiences, I felt like I kind of gained trust, gained approval. There was no there was no like, okay, Jordan, now you can post about that. But I
Hmm.
think that and again, it kind of goes back to the social media voice and what we talked about kind of before this stream is as long as you're being nice, as long as you're being supportive, as long as you're not punching down, it's not really a bad thing. If someone hates that you made a post about LGBTQ, like that's more on them than it is on me. So
Yeah.
I don't really care. It doesn't bother me
Yeah.
if someone's bothered by it. You know, as long as you're nice and supportive. And the other thing is, let's say the company with 200 employees I'm working at posts something
Mhm.
about any of those minority rights or whatnot, and in 6 years the company blows up and becomes Nike. No one's going to go
Mhm.
back in time and be like, oh my god, they supported LGBTQ rights in 2022, that's bad. Like, no, it's just deal with it. Like,
Yeah.
just I think people look at social media and they think that like it's the end all be all and like they're
Yeah.
going to get canceled for this or that, and it's like, yeah, like famous people,
Yeah.
like if Nike posted something, I keep bringing up Nike, or if
Yeah. Well, but
Frito,
these are the brands that have the big social media presences.
yeah, and I mean if they posted something super negative about some minority group, yeah, that's gonna get them canceled.
Hmm.
But 99% of companies, like, no one even notices, and as long as you're being supportive and nice and
Hmm.
friendly, I've never had any pushback. So I think,
So at that point, like, kind of take your role out of it for a moment, like, because you're like getting orders from on high in a way. If you're a small business owner, where would you kind of draw the line in terms of, okay, now it's okay to talk about it. What voice do we want to talk to? Like, if you were the owner of a company, how politicized do you think you'd want to be?
maybe I'm different than most people, but I don't like supporting a minority is not super political to me.
It shouldn't be in my mind, but that's,
I
yeah.
know, and
No,
that's the thing.
that's not. To me, I'm a big believer that time moves in one direction, albeit slower than we want it to, and it more moves towards empathy and acceptance. And
100%.
I don't think you will ever be on the wrong side of the argument if you're talking about empathy and acceptance, long term.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. And I mean, I owned a small business right out of college. It was a sticker business where we, you know, had like free the nipple stickers and like native pride stickers and
Yeah.
like all sorts of, I guess, political messages. Um,
Woke, yes.
woke, full woke.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't care. I was just, if someone subscribes to that and wants to buy my sticker, cool. If someone hates that and doesn't want to buy my sticker, well, like, all right, get crappy stickers somewhere else. Like, mine are good. Um,
Yeah.
and so, especially if you're a small business, I would probably, it's cool to support all of these, minorities and people who are like not treated well in society. But I think if you are a small business, it's more important to focus on your business. If you really personally are a huge fan of BLM or want to support LGBTQ rights, like, make your post, do that. That's
Yeah.
fine. Doesn't bother me as long, again, nice and supportive. But I think if you're a small business and you're trying to get customers, like, just focus on business content. And then once you have more employees, like, you might hire a minority, and it's like, well, if talk to them, listen to them, just like we did in those groups, and if that's something that they feel passionate about and you're comfortable supporting, like, go ahead, make a post and make everyone happy. It's one, you're making 10 posts a day. It's
Mhm.
one out of what, 360,000. Like, it's
Yeah,
not,
yeah, 3,600 posts. Yeah, it's
yeah, it's
easy.
not a big deal. Sorry, I'm bad at mental math, but my bad.
No, no, I'm no, that's not my strong suit either. So let's kind of, to bring it back to sales. Like, how do you start taking this content, and how often do you push for like a call to action? How much do you push for this becoming a sale? Like, how pushy do you want to be, and how do you actually convert them from followers to customers?
Um, I kind of think again, it's more of the long game, and so if you have calls to action, I think there should be calls to action in most posts, even if it's just a link to your website, just to
Mhm.
give someone something to do. That's definitely important. But the way that I, or at least the way I personally operate, is like there's YouTube channels that I've watched and I've probably seen 50 other videos, and
Mhm.
like I won't subscribe to them, and one time they make like a banger and I'm like, all right, that one got me. I'll give you my
Yeah.
subscribe. And there's another YouTuber who he kind of actually looks like you except without red. He's his name is Dan Hurd, and he's like a prospector.
Okay.
And his
What like a sales prospector or like an old timey like miner?
old timey, he's a mining guy, and
Like there's gold in them there hills kind of miner.
yeah, like he goes into
Okay.
caves and owns like tracts of land and digs up agates, and I don't really
Mhm.
even know what he's talking about half the time. But
Yeah.
um, he always starts his video off like, "Hey, this is what we're doing. This is blah blah blah," and I hope to earn your subscription. And like when I saw that,
Oh, I love that line.
I know, and I was like, "Oh shit, that's the best line ever." And I was like, "All right, I'll give you my subscription. You earned it," just because one, I had never heard that, and two, it's like,
Oh,
"Oh,
wow.
you're actually working for this. Like you want it." And
I love that line so much. Like it's not asking for it. It's like, wow.
yeah, and I
I'm
mean,
stealing that like full bore. I'm stealing that.
no,
I'm
go
going to
ahead,
let
Dan.
everybody know I'm going to be saying that a lot in the near future.
I use it all the time. I even have used it in LinkedIn posts, and I hope to earn your follow is a little more relevant for LinkedIn.
Whatever. Yeah. You're depends on what you're looking for. Your retweet, your whatever.
And yeah, it's just over time, people will subscribe to you more, and I've noticed that, in, like, my LinkedIn posts, like, the more I post, the more people I see like, "Oh, like, you liked it again," and and it's like
Mhm.
it's kinda like forming habits with people, or, God, what's that thing where you ring the bell and the dog starts drooling because of food?
Pavlovian, yeah, the Pavlovian response.
Yes, and it's kinda like that. It's just over time, people eventually you'll get them, and it
Yeah.
doesn't matter if there's a CTA and everything, or, if it is there, it's definitely helpful, but, if you're just posting a meme for fun, can't can't always have a CTA, but just
No.
over time, people will get used to seeing content, and the more it's kinda like familiarity. The more familiar you are with stuff, the more you like it, and then it gets into
Mhm.
persuasion. The more you like something, the more likely you are to be persuaded by it, and then
Mhm.
eventually you'll check out the website, and you know it's the long game. So after, excuse me, however many months, someone's going to click on your website, and the more you post, the more that those people will have been conditioned to do that. And then over time, it's like one on month one, and then five on month two, and then now you got 20, and then 60, and now it's like 100. And that's why I like
My
social media.
my my favorite thing about this, I did a post about it yesterday because so about a week ago, I sat with a guy who had been following my content for 6 months, and I didn't know him, and he suddenly reached out and said, "Do you want to be on my podcast?" Like you have, if you're creating content on a regular basis, you have no clue what's in your pipeline, who's following you, and then all of a sudden you get you know, a book deal, a speaker deal, new customer, but you get that through that consistency of being that right voice all the time.
You Pavloved him, man.
Yeah, that's like I hate to say it, but I mean it was such an awesome conversation to know like I had somebody who was a fan and just I you don't know who's a fan of you until you actually start posting content. And it took him 6 months to reach out to have me on the show.
Yeah, well, I mean, people want to get to know you as a person. People want to get comfortable with you. The more content you post, the more they
Mhm.
understand who you are. And again, it's just back to my YouTube comment. It's the same thing. We're like, literally right before this, I was watching Andrew Schultz' Flagrant podcast,
He's
and
hysterical. Like he's somebody I just found, and he's one of my new favorites.
he's gold.
Yeah.
He roasted Kanye the other day, and I was just loving that. But
Well, yes.
anyways, I was watching
Yeah.
him, and I realized I wasn't subscribed, and he had Marquise Brownlee, who, for those who don't know out there, he's a tech YouTuber. He reviews technology. He's been to the Met Gala. He's hung out with Bill Gates, and I've
Yeah.
known him and I've watched his content for a while. When I saw like Andrew Schultz, who's this like traditional or kind of traditional comedian, like I was like, oh, like you're like he had Mr. Beast on his podcast like a week or two
Yeah.
ago, and I was like, oh, like Marquise Brownlee is like, oh, now you're kind of like interviewing these people that I really enjoy, and I hit the subscribe button, and I've been watching his content for 2 years at this point, maybe even longer.
Yeah.
And he Pavloved me, and I think it's a good thing.
Yeah. So where do you find, like, how do you keep your voice consistent with content creation? Like, I have my own theories that I've told people in the past too, but how, like, when you're building this brand, when you're building this content, how do you keep the voice kind of the same and remain consistent without just chasing dogs all over the place, or chasing squirrels, I should say?
Yeah. You know, um, I think a lot of that is kind of has to do with like the individual content creator.
Mhm.
There's tons of like LinkedIn influencers who I follow, and you know, all they do is just kind of like post their own thoughts, and it
Mhm.
resonates with me. It obviously resonates with a lot of people. That's why they have a lot of followers. And I kind of try to do the same. Like I use my own voice in social media. I've always been taught to write the way you speak, and you know, my dad's always told me like if you can eliminate words and still get the same message across, it's more powerful. And so that's kind of how I've been brought up, how I've been raised, how I think, how I speak, and then I just do that on social. I guess I'm just kind of I'm writing from my own voice, and I mean, again, I know I talked about writing earlier. Um, Wanting to be a food and travel writer. I do love writing, whether it's
Yeah.
you know, essays aren't necessarily fun anymore, but I never hated writing essays like some
Yeah.
people did. And I was just kind of like stream of thought, sort of stream of consciousness from my head. And that's kind of the way that I've always operated writing. And when I'm writing content for social media, it's just kind of like, what do I think? All right, get that on paper. And if you know my manager wants to edit it or change it, okay, cool, they can do that.
Yeah.
But like the gist of it, the main message is just kind of stream of conscious from my head. And I think a lot of people will write stuff and like triple check it, double check it, and like, oh, that's not the, and it's in reality, it doesn't really matter what word you
Yeah.
use or what adjective or the orientation of the sentence or the sentence structure. Like as long as again, is it nice? Is it friendly? Is it funny? People will get it. You know, maybe it won't go viral every time, but you know, people will enjoy it and they'll consume it, they'll like it. And again, that's kind of the point of social media where once they start doing that, they'll do it more and then eventually they'll check out your website. And now social media is generating customers just like, you know, SDRs and BDRs. So I think the way to stay consistent in your voice is just be yourself, I guess.
Yeah.
And again, like if you are a deep, dark, horrible person and you're writing things like that, no one wants to see that. Um, well, you can
Depends
be
on the
deep and
day.
dark.
Like pre-coffee, I'm a deep, dark, horrible person. Yes. Like I can, yeah. We all have those moments, but
Well, yeah, definitely don't post pre-coffee then.
yeah, no, I definitely do not.
But I just mean you know, if you're like a not you, but if you're an evil person, you're thinking all these horrible things about people and society
Mhm.
and life, then it's like you're probably not cut out to be a social media manager because that voice
Mhm.
will come out and no one will like it. No one wants to hear that. People like positive. That's why when
Mhm.
you look at like Reddit, like the mildly infuriating subreddit,
Mhm.
like that's like people being annoyed at stuff. You know, they'll get a couple thousand likes, but if you look at like made me smile and it's like a colorblind person trying on color glasses for the first time, it's like 100,000 upvotes every time. And it's like people just like positive more than negative. And I think as long as you kind of keep that voice in your social media, um, people will.
Because that's something that I've always struggled with, and it's something because, and we've talked, and I know you've had some very negative experiences in the past in the sales world, um, but my really a lot of my brand is about the things that are broken in our society. How do you address these negative things that, like, the problems that we have in sales? Like we've talked about you being an SDR, SDRs have some of the highest turnover ever. Like sales has triple the turnover of the average American job. How do you address the negative in a way that is positive?
That's a good question. When it
Or
comes,
do you even?
yeah, no, I'm trying to think of. I mean, I kind of go because I'm an SDR, and like I said before the podcast went live, like I have pretty thick skin. Um,
Hmm.
I kind of address it head on, and there's like
Yeah,
some certain sales leaders who say like, "This is what makes a good manager," and like, "How many deals did your SDR close, and how much quota did they make?" And while that's true, it's not really up to the manager. I remember he had a specific post, and I commented like, "How many SDRs have you promoted to AE?" and
yeah.
and it got a lot of my comment got a lot of likes, and um, so I think addressing it head on, from a personal, like from your own LinkedIn
Hmm.
page or your own Twitter, I think that's okay. I mean, you obviously don't want to be rude, and I didn't say like I didn't ask him directly, but I more said like I think it's more important to for a SDR BDR manager to talk about how many SDRs they've promoted to AE. Of course, he didn't respond. Um, you know,
Well, and at that point, like that's another thing that a lot of people have a difficult time with too. Is when do you and when do you not engage in? I'm not saying it was a trolly question, but when the conversation it does get trolly and combative, how combative do you get is always a difficult thing for content creators to know because you're putting your heart out there as a content creator.
it's tough.
Yeah.
I'd say on an individual level, it's probably just don't burn bridges. Like I said,
Hmm.
be nice. Make a joke. A little troll, little light trolling's okay in my opinion.
Yeah.
You don't want to make anyone feel bad or offend anyone. Um, but when it comes to a brand, um, I'd say balls to the wall. Like do like Wendy's does,
Yeah. Wendy's goes full bore and just attacks everybody.
and I think the thing to differentiate, at least in my opinion, is it's important to not troll individuals
Hmm.
unless it's unless they set you up for a slamboni. Um,
Yeah.
but I think like I know I keep bringing up Nike, but like if Nike is roasting Adidas, totally fine. No one,
Yeah.
it's Adidas is not a person; it's a company, and I think companies can do that to each other. I think in a lot of ways it's mutually beneficial because
Hmm.
if one company does it to another and another does it back, it's like now people are involved in the drama and more people are clicking on the website and it's more potential
It's
customers.
like those pictures you see where two companies are across the street and have like a billboard sign war.
There's a really funny one between Chevy and Ford, and I'm a huge Chevy guy, and I just remember it was
Oh, my sympathies.
uh, come on, don't try to tell that guy.
Ah, no, 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 no.
It's well, it was something like in front of every good Chevy is a Ford, and then Chevy's response was, "That's because Fords are doing 45 in the fast lane," or something goofy
Yeah.
like that. And it's like, it's
No,
that's
no,
not
that's
gonna
Subarus. Subarus do not get out of the left lane, and it drives me nuts.
well, and Nissan Altimas drive 120 and don't use their
Yeah.
turn signal.
Well,
It's
well, who needs turn signals?
God, I one of my most popular Reddit posts ever was it said like it was a one of those like traffic light up signs or whatever, and
Uh-huh.
it said it was right around New Year's, and it said New Year, new you, use your blinker,
Yeah.
which I just always thought was really funny.
Yes.
But yeah, a little playful back and forth is totally fine. But when it comes to like your individual LinkedIn profile, probably not the best thing to do just because someone might see it and be like, "Oh man, like I don't want to hire them." And if you got to do it in a private message, I guess.
But I like what you're talking about too, is like when it's Nike, Adidas, Ford, Chevy, like the reason you're able to make those jokes is because those brands have done such a great job of personifying and like creating this personality to them. Like
People
again,
like people. They want their
yeah,
brands to seem like people, and that's why every YouTuber, they never say like, "This week I'm doing this." It's like, "Hey guys, we're gonna go do this," and it's like, "What do you
yeah.
mean we're gonna do it?" Like I'm sitting on my couch not doing anything. We're not
Like
gonna
I'm
do
thinking of that Community episode with Subway,
yeah.
where Subway literally had a person that legally changed their name to Subway and go around and talking about sandwiches.
And yeah, people like that. People identify. I think in the remote post COVID world, a lot of people are lonely. They haven't been around people very much, and the more that as
Which was
sad
my
as it
favorite
is.
part of the COVID world, in fact, was not being around people as much.
It is quite nice most of the
Yes.
time. But yeah, the more that a company can humanize itself, the more persuasive they can be, the more likable they can be, um, just the more relatable they can be. I mean, no
Mhm.
one no one wakes up and goes, "I relate to a company." People relate to
No.
people, and so the more that companies and can be inclusive, not even in terms of like all the other stuff we were talking about, but
Yeah.
inclusive in terms of making people feel like they're a part of the company. That's how
Mhm.
you get devoted fans for life, essentially.
But that's like the difference between Apple and having people wait outside on the sidewalk at 3 o'clock in the morning, and Dell. Like Apple has a personality, Dell kind of doesn't.
Yeah, but I haven't thought about Dell in a very, very, very long
I
time.
don't even know how around they are anymore, but I'm just,
I want to
but
make a
there aren't
gaming
people
joke.
like scoping out the release of the newest Hewlett Packard.
I don't know. I've never met anyone who's done that, but I feel like
No.
those folks are like with Gateway and like those kinds of
Ooh. Well,
like those.
yeah, that's like you're making my back hurt a little bit.
I'm just this is like me at like 11 years old, like in Best Buy, like oh my god, computers.
Mm,
But
yeah.
yeah,
But that goes back to what you were talking about. Like when you looked at these companies, it was very much like this is how many gigabytes we have. Like they talked about features as opposed to like, okay, here's you dancing, here's the emotion that our product creates. And when you're creating this content, leaning on that emotion is always key.
that's why Sega was so successful in like the video game wars of the 90s, where it was like
Mhm.
Genesis does what Nintendo don't, or
Yeah.
whatever the song was, and it's like Sega like is
And it's
love
also why they fell apart is because eventually they just completely relied on, okay, we have more gigabytes.
more bits.
Yeah, exactly. That was all it was. Is yeah, because gigabytes weren't even heard of at that point. But yeah,
They had a personality for a while, with the
yeah,
songs and Sonic being kind of like a alt kind of
yeah,
guy, and Sega was the underdog. It was like having something more rare, because
hmm
everyone had a Nintendo,
yeah,
and Sega kind of branded themselves in that way, and then eventually it just became 16-bit, 32-bit, 64-bit, and no one even.
hmm
I remember we talked about Angry Video Game Nerd, and he
yes,
always talks about this. Like he was a kid, he didn't know what bits were, but he knew that more were better. But eventually, you can't just keep being robotic and saying like we have blah blah blah. We have blah blah blah. It's like that's just not enough. You
yeah.
need creativity. You need a voice. You need personality. Um, and
And like Nintendo has always been like top of the list for all these video games. They've been around forever, and they've usually had some of the worst hardware out of everybody.
God, that
Like when you look at like bit size and everything, like
well, even controllers.
PlayStation
Like the
5 is
N64
way
controller,
more computationally sound than the Switch is.
100%. But again, like Nintendo has personality. They've always had
Mhm.
personality. Their characters have always had personality. Their controllers sucked, but they always had
Mhm.
personality. And I
They
think,
don't fit. Like those little Joy Cons are like give my hands cramp.
well, I'm even thinking like the N64 controller, where it's like the three
Oh,
prongs.
where's the three and like you have to like grip it around the side? Yeah,
Yeah, and despite how bad it was, like that's what got me into video games. Just it was
yeah.
character. I mean, I remember playing GoldenEye
hmm
because and I know we talked about this in our previous conversation, but like playing GoldenEye, waiting for my friend's older brother to come get mad at us for playing on his
hmm
N64, and it was just like it was fun, it was cool, and another friend later in life I played GameCube with, and I loved playing GameCube, and I don't even like Nintendo now, but that whole thing, like I thought they were the best as a kid because they
Yeah.
were creative, because they were fun. They had awesome marketing, like when Smash came out, and Mario and
hmm
Donkey Kong are in these full like costumes, like beating the crap out of each other. Like
Yeah.
it was just awesome.
Oh, I remember that commercial.
It's
Like the full mascot commercial. Like they were in like the mascot costumes.
Yeah, they were. It was just like people fighting, basically.
Yeah, yeah. No, I
Um,
love that. Like that. It's like yeah. Like wow. That was such a yeah. My back hurts again.
we're talking a lot about old stuff, but I mean, it's
Yeah.
important because that's the kind of stuff that gets people hooked. That's what gets people excited. And then I still play video games to this day. I just had a conversation with a buddy last night about let's play video games on Sunday and like nerd out over what's the newest on Game Pass. And I was giving him tips on what to download. And I mean, it's because of Nintendo, and they
Yeah,
kind of they Pavloved me, taking it full
yeah,
circle.
yeah. So I know we got to run like all of that. How do people find you? What like kind of lead the way? Like where do you want people to look for you, follow you, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I currently in my personal brand, I'm mostly focused on LinkedIn. If you search Jordan Tennenbaum, there ain't too many other Jordan Tennenbaums out in the world, so I should come up. Um, if
That's
folks
the
want to
nice
follow,
thing about having a last name that people don't know how to spell or pronounce is like
yeah,
showing up on searches.
yeah, and I mean, people call me Tan. Hey, have you seen the Royal Tenenbaums? No, I never have, and I'm not going to
Yeah,
because I think it's funny that I haven't, and it's my
yeah,
last name. But yeah, if you want to follow me on LinkedIn, I post kind of a whole bunch of different content there. I have a series about it's called Cool Companies Doing Cool Things, and I look for cool companies doing cool things, and I post about what they do. I share stories about my career. I talk about transitioning from being an SDR to a social media manager. LinkedIn is definitely the place. I can drop a link to my LinkedIn in the chat. Give me
yeah,
one
absolutely.
1 second in case any folks want to see it there. Um,
Oh,
yeah, I'm happy to connect. I'm happy to talk. I'd say I probably would provide a lot of value to SDRs, considering how
hmm
seasoned I am, whether that be good or bad. But I'm always happy to talk about the 6 principles of persuasion. Happy to talk about how to work on going from SDR to AE, especially SDR to social media manager, because I think that's uh, there's just so much value that SDRs have, especially being younger and especially knowing all about persuasion. And it's pretty
hmm
easy to transfer into a social media manager role. Um, and yeah, big announcement coming soon. I'm starting a new
Yes.
job, which I'm very excited about at a very large company running social media for them. Um, for the past few years, I've been in companies that are really, really small, and I'm very, very, very excited to transition into like a more corporate, established company, as that sets up, future opportunities for me. And yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'm always happy to chat, talk, help. Be a shoulder to cry on, whatever y'all need. I'm here.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks so much. Can't wait to do this again. And whatever you need, obviously reach out. Anybody else who would love to be on to talk about this that kind of stuff, feel free to reach out as well too. And I will see you guys at some point next week.
Fantastic, man. This has been awesome. I'm glad to be a guest and happy to come back whenever you need. And otherwise, have a great rest of your day and great week, everyone.
All right. Have a great one.
Bye now.